QSO Today, episode 338, Jerry Weisskohl, AC4BT. This episode of QSO Today is sponsored by ICOM America, makers of the finest HF, VHF, and UHF transceivers and accessories for the radio amateur, reminding you in this new year to check out their new IC705 all-band portable transceiver, now shipping from your favorite amateur radio dealer. My thanks to ICOM America for their continued support of the QSO Today podcast. Welcome to the QSO Today podcast. I'm Eric Guth for Z1UG, your host. Flex Radio is one of the two, hopefully, platinum sponsors of the upcoming QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo that will return in March 2021. This week, we are focused on AMSAT, the Radio Amateur Satellite Corporation, who will be exhibiting in the expo as well as making 9 presentations in their own auditorium. Be sure to check out AMSAT and all the rest of our amazing presenters at the QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo website at qsotodayhamexpo.com. Jerry Weisskohl, AC4BT, got a late start in amateur radio but thinks that the ardent practice of CW or Morse code is exactly what quiets and relaxes the mind after an engaging day as a computer scientist. AC4BT has taken lead roles with CWops and CW Academy and is my QSO today. AC4BT, this is Eric for Z1UG. Are you there, Jerry?
Yes, Eric, I'm here. Nice to see you this afternoon.
Thank you, Jerry. Thanks for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. Can we start at the beginning of your ham radio story? When and how did it start for you?
Okay, very good. Well, actually, I started late in life. I was about 36 years old. I was always interested in ham radio, but I just really didn't know how to get started. Fortunately for me, there was a ham store not too far from me. It was called EEB. It's now long gone. And so I went in there and, they told me I needed to pass the novice test. So back then they had the novice exam, which was really given spontaneously or, it was not a formal thing. And it was just you had to do 5 words per minute on CW. I purchased a tape for practice, came back a few weeks later. I can't remember her call sign. Very nice woman there named Nancy. I think she was, she was an angel, really. I think she was being very kind to me. I did pass, but it was probably a little shaky on the CW part.
Let's go back even farther, because you said that you'd always wanted to be a ham radio operator. When did you first get the taste of electronics or radio or ham radio?
Yeah, I've always been interested in electronics. My degree is in computer science. However, that always interested me. Not necessarily ham radio, but I guess I must have picked up a magazine somewhere along the line and thought that, wow, this is a neat hobby. This is something I really need to look into.
Everyone likes an origin story, Jerry. So they want to know, were you one of these 5-year-olds that would put the safety scissors in the electric outlet? Were you that kind of a kid?
No, but I like to build things. So I never destroyed the house, but I certainly had fun, building little kits. So it probably got started at that point.
So in grade school, you started with an interest in electronics?
Yeah.
And how did that interest start? Was it a magazine? Was it a relative?
Yeah, I think it was a magazine because we really didn't have anyone that I can remember that was into ham radio. I was always interested in radio, so I remember, having several, AM radio sets, and I built a couple of small ones, and listening to radio always, fascinated me. Shortwave listening, things like that. Of course, when you're doing the shortwave listening, you're going to pick up some ham radio. I got interested in that once I found out what it was. So there was always something sort of gnawing at me over the years to take this further. But, life being what it is, it was pretty hectic. I got married, had kids, et cetera, et cetera. I think I got started later in life because things started to settle down at that point for me.
But you had an interest in things technical. Was that interest in things technical the reason that you chose the professional direction in your life?
I'm a computer scientist, and really, I think the reason I chose that was my interest in chess, which has nothing to do with ham radio. But I play in tournaments. Well, not now unfortunately during the COVID times, but I would play over the board and have a master rating. The progression from playing chess well is perfect for computer science, because in computer science, you're writing programs. You have to think about, if I do this, what happens, if this doesn't work, et cetera, et cetera. You have to, think about outcomes. And that's perfect for chess, because chess has the same thought process. So I excelled in computer science. And I was a programmer. I worked at Honeywell. I worked at Wang Labs. And I ended my career, as I am now retired, working for the Surgeon General's office.
We don't want to go to your retirement quite yet, because then we could wrap up the show in about 10 minutes and everybody could go home. So I want to pursue a little bit of the early Jerry. Were you a chess player in high school?
Oh, yeah. I used to play with my father, and when I was about, 5 or 6, and after I kept beating him, he didn't want to play with me anymore. And I remember playing with my uncle, and then I really didn't know there was such a thing as tournaments until I got into high school, and I played, on my high school team and also on my college team. And I was first board at George Washington University, where I went to get my degree. It's just, a love for the game that I've always had. I think it has really influenced my entire life because it forces you to be a disciplined thinker. That is needed for computer science too.
So you'd highly recommend the practice of chess for disciplining the mind?
Well, I would recommend the practice of chess solely to do better. You will definitely do better in life, because it just, forces you to slow down, to think about the outcomes, and not just impetuously jump into anything. And I think it's just a great tool in life in general. But it's been very good for ham radio also, because for problem solving, something's not going well, then you can, systematically approach it. Check your cabling, check the antenna, kind of isolate where the problem is and eliminate things. So chess has been just wonderful for me.
Well, the media and the movie industry loves to focus on chess players who are absolutely extraordinary on the one hand. On the other hand, they seem to also like the stories of chess players where the game itself drives them insane. Is there any truth to that, or is that really more about Hollywood and not about chess playing?
No, I think there is some truth to that. I met Bobby Fischer, who was world champion back in 1972 and really started the chess craze in the United States. And he was a genius, but I think he also went crazy, in the end. And there's a fine line between genius and insanity. I met him, and I remember he got so worked up about little things in life. There was somebody had mentioned to him these little number puzzles that, they're a square and they have little tiles that are numbered from like 1 to 15, and you have to rearrange them in the numerical order. And this woman claimed that her brother, who was about 8 years old at the time, could do it and, could get the solution in less than a minute. He got really upset, because he had one of these, little puzzle games at the table. And he took down her address, and he was going to come and challenge her 8-year-old brother. So I thought that was a little crazy.
Okay, so you have this amazing chess hobby. You've gone through George Washington University. You've become a computer scientist. And you ended your career by working for the U.S. Surgeon General, which I would think that would be fascinating. How does the U.S. Surgeon General's office use a computer scientist?
Well, I was director of the IT side of the payroll. So we have the Surgeon General had a payroll for what's called the U.S. Public Health Service. They're health professionals. There's about 7,000 of them, doctors and nurses. And they get deployed, like when we had the 9/11 and all the other, things that go around, and they're deployed right now for the COVID-19. So we did their payroll. Those are active duty officers, but we also did the payroll for the retirees and the annuitants. So I managed that group and also provided the day-to-day data needs to the Surgeon General's office, as we had, databases, etc.
So when you're 36 or so, you get your first license. That was the novice license. What year was that?
That was 1990. That was in 1990. I had actually taken a test, and I was waiting for my call sign. I remember that. And I took it in December of 1989, and it came in like the second week of January of 1990. I was quite excited.
And you took the novice first.
Yeah, I took the novice. My first call sign was KC4OHD. When I eventually got on the air, I had so much interest coming from that call. And, I thought this was like a normal thing. These people are so friendly. What a great hobby. But it turns out that KC4OHD was Antarctica, was a call that used to be used for Antarctica. I was getting these pileups on me, and I just couldn't understand why. What's even funnier than that is my second call was N4YNZ, and that's just a normal call. But my current call, which is AC4BT, used to be Tibet. And again, when I first got that call, they were all over me, and I just thought, wow, this is a great hobby.
How important was Elmering or mentoring to your ham radio growth?
It was very important, and I remember, I passed the test. Nancy gave me that test from EEB, and I passed it. And then I said, well, okay, but how do I get on the air? I have no clue. I have no background on this. So she suggested that I go to one of the radio club meetings, the neighborhood radio club meetings, which I did. And she told me that when you get there, just let them know that you're brand new, you got a new license, and you need somebody to help you, to mentor you. So I did that. I got in front of the group. There was a time where they, for questions, etc. So I raised my hand and I introduced myself as a new ham, and I asked if anyone could mentor me. Unfortunately, there was no reply. I didn't give up. And I had a radio by then, and not really knowing what I was doing, but smart enough to kind of dig into things. I put up a dipole on my roof. It had, tremendous signals, but I didn't know anything about grounding, that I needed to ground my station. And I got on that local ham club that I just spoke of. They had a weekly sideband net on 10 meters. So I got on that, and then everyone was telling me that I was, beautiful signal, wow, what a signal, etc. One guy actually was wanted to come over and help me with my questions, etc. So I gave out my phone number, and so this is going on for a few minutes, and I'm sitting in my long johns in the middle of winter, and the door almost gets broken down, and they didn't break the door down, but the police show up. I mean, that just scared the hell out of me. And it turns out that since I didn't ground my station at all, I was getting into the telephone system. And when I was giving out my phone number, a neighbor or somebody close thought I was in distress. And, because it's sideband, and I guess they couldn't really hear very clearly, but they heard the phone number. They called the police. So they came down to investigate. So that was a welcome to ham radio and a real shock. After I explained the situation, they smiled and went on their merry way. So that was my introduction to getting on the air. But right after that, though, I did get a lot of help. And I had one guy, his name was Jim Pettit. He's a silent key now, KN4GV. He came over, and after he was, finished laughing at me, he took down that antenna that was on top of my roof and put a really nice antenna up in the trees. And boy, was it effective. I mean, I was talking to stations, all over the world. Back in 1989, 90, the sun cycle was at its height. And, which I thought was, I thought it was normal to have all these signals out there because I didn't know, and I was kind of disappointed years later, when like what we have now, there's not much activity, although the new sun cycle, which has started, is promising and should bring us, better propagation.
And now this message from ICOM America. ICOM wants to wish you a very happy 2021. This happiness should include hours of fun and enjoyment with the new ICOM IC705 portable transceiver. The ICOM IC705 is the perfect sidekick for amateurs that enjoy operating any mode both indoors and outdoors. It is the perfect QRP companion with base station features and functionality at the tip of your fingers in a portable package covering HF 6 meters, 2 meters, and 70 centimeters. This compact rig weighs in just over 2 pounds. The ICOM IC705 has RF direct sampling for most of the HF band and IF sampling for frequencies above 25 megahertz. Its other features include a 4.3-inch touchscreen with live band scope and waterfall display, 5 watts out with a BP272 battery pack, or 10 watts with a 13.8 volts DC from an external power source. Operating modes include single sideband CW, AM, FM, digital modes, as well as full D-Star functions, a micro USB connector, Bluetooth, wireless LAN, integrated GPS with antenna and GPS logger, micro SD card slot. The HM243 speaker microphone is standard equipment and included in the box. The IC705 supports QRP and QRPP operations. And the perfect accessory for the IC705 is now available in the LC192 optional backpack that includes a special compartment for your IC705 with room for accessories for soda activation or a day's social distancing in the park. Of course, there is a huge list of available accessories including cables, batteries, and software listed on the ICOM IC705 website. Folks, this is a fine rig with many available positive online reviews. It will become the de facto standard as a baseband rig for microwave operators, and since it now has the RS-BA1 IP-based remote control software, the IC705 will be the first choice as a remote-based rig. You owe it to yourself to make the ICOM IC705 your transceiver of choice for the new year. Be sure to click on the banner ad in this week's show notes page for more information on this amazing rig. But once you do that, be sure to call your favorite ICOM dealer to place your order. The ICOM IC705 is in stock and shipping today. And when you do that, please be sure to tell your dealer that you heard it here on QSO Today. Thanks as always to ICOM for sponsoring the QSO Today podcast. Be sure to visit www.icomamerica.com/amateur for more information on other ICOM radios as well. And now back to our QSO. You were talking earlier that you were on 10-meter sideband, but it seems to me you've kind of changed, right? You actually have a preference for an operating mode. What is that operating mode?
Yeah, my preference is, CW. And I always had a preference for CW. It's a difficult mode. It's easy, to learn the rules, meaning recognizing the letters of the alphabet, the special characters, etc. But it is difficult to get better at it. You want to get to the point where you can, understand everybody and have a QSO or conversation with people out there at a decent speed. And that just, unless you just naturally gifted, which I don't think I was, just requires, a lot of effort. So I really like the mode. I was just starting, and working my way up the ladder, with that. But what really clinched it for me, and I don't think I've ever gotten back on sideband, was I had I don't know what I had, some kind of strep throat or a really bad cold, but I really couldn't talk at all. So that took out sideband, period. And that lasted for about a month until I 100% got over it. So then I delved into CW 100%, and I never looked back.
Now, one would think that there would be, at least at that time, you might have some digital modes like RTTY or something like that. Did you look at those?
I did very briefly, but that never interests me. For me, I needed to be an active participant. So when I'm on the air making a QSO, I don't want my computer to make it for me. In fact, I worked a lot of hours when I was working, a lot of overtime. I didn't want to have anything to do with the computer, when I got home. I used it, as a logging program, to log my calls. But really, everything that I've done on CW is really just manual. I don't have the computer generating any CW for me, and I don't have any kind of CW reader or anything like that. It's just like totally analog. So no, I never really cared too much for any of the digital modes.
And when you get on CW, what form of communication do you like? Are you a contester, DXer, rag chewer?
Yeah, I'm a DXer and a rag chewer. I'm definitely not a contester, although I do the contests, and that's mainly to get the DX stations, because that's when they all come out, obviously. Yeah, I enjoy the rag chewing. I think I once had a QSO for like 4 hours straight, and I got totally lost in it, and I wasn't even aware of the time. I remember when I first started to get on CW, I really didn't know what to say. You exchange signals, you give your name and your QTH and the weather and etc. And then you're basically out of things to say. So I decided to make kind of a list of topics that I could talk about. Nothing in detail, just little headers, and I could improvise the rest. So I had a list there that I built about, a page and a half full of items. And boy, I kept going, and the other guy kept going, and it was a very enjoyable QSO. And then when I looked up, and the guy said, he had to beg off to get to bed, I kind of looked at the time, and I couldn't believe the 4 hours had gone by. But for me, CW, it's very therapeutic. It's very relaxing. And somebody would say, my God, when I get on CW, it's all nerves and it's all, it's anything but relaxing. But, once you get the hang of it, and you get the hang of it by just actually being on the air, you can only do so much, on the computer or practicing yourself. But if you're on the air, then it starts to come. And the hams are friendly enough that they'll slow down if somebody, is not as fast as they are. And they're very courteous. Some of the most courteous people I've ever met in life in general have been ham radio people, but more so CW operators. It's just, a very friendly presence out there. So it's always something that was therapeutic for me. Would have a hard day at work. I would come home after talking to the family, maybe at 10 o'clock at night, I'd come down to the Radio Shack and get on CW. And when I was done, it was like, taking some type of drug or something, because I was totally, totally relaxed. And so, it was always an allure for me. I guess you could say I've been smitten with CW. So I always enjoyed, CW, and it's been the best part of the hobby. The rag chews are what I enjoy the most. I do the contesting really just to get the DX stations confirmed.
Jerry, let's go back to your list for a second, because I think that it's very interesting that you made a page-and-a-half list of potential topics that you could talk about with people. Can you give a couple of examples of what might not be so obvious, but conversation starters that you might have used?
Yeah, I would talk about where I've been on vacation over the years. Anything that was, happening in my life that, would fit as a topic, I would put in. Like, not that many years ago, my daughters moved out to California. So I would talk about that. And, interesting enough, the word daughter is not something years before that I would really get quickly if somebody was sending it. But once you start using these words that you don't normally use, you add to your vocabulary, your CW working vocabulary. And I look at CW as a language. A lot of people they don't really see it. They see a bunch of dits and das or hear a bunch of dits and das. But it's sort of like, let's say you go on vacation and you go to France and you know very little French, and you go to some coffee place or bakery, and you know enough to order a coffee and a Danish or whatever it may be, and to greet the waitress. But if you wander away from that environment, you're kind of lost. So that, those few words and the things that make up, your vocabulary. But you can add to your vocabulary. And CW is the same. Like when you start, you know how to send your name. You know how to send the signal report. You know how to send, your location, the QTH, the weather, and the radio and the antenna. But that's about it. And so when you hear those words in CW, you recognize them because you've done it a million times, over and over and over again. But when you start new topics and using words consistently that are, that used to be new to you, they become part of your working vocabulary. And that's how you can really start using CW as a language. And then when you get to having a QSO with somebody who's very experienced, it can go very fast and has a good vocabulary, really, it's like having a conversation with somebody. You lose the fact that you're keying this paddle. I use a iambic paddle, and it's almost, like you're just telepathically talking to them because you're not using, your voice. That's the other thing I found fascinating with CW is I could have a conversation with somebody without even talking. So there are many parts of CW, to me, that have kept my interest over the years.
Do you hear CW as whole words or phrases, or do you put the letters together? I mean, the way that I learned CW, which made it probably not very exciting or interesting, is that you had a yellow pad and you wrote as quickly as possible the letters that you're supposed to write down and then kind of look back and decode the message. I found that to be very difficult. I was able to get all the way through my general class up to 13 words a minute to take the test to do that. But then I hear people talk like you, and it's kind of like Zen and the art of CW operation, that maybe it was the way we learned it 50 years ago that was the problem. And maybe the way that you're learning it now or the way that people are learning it now is actually better. What do you think's the difference now?
Well, I think it's a little bit of what you just said. When I took that novice test, at that ham store, it was 5 words a minute, very, very slow. And the characters were very slow. And, the characters need to be at, at least 20 words a minute speed, the characters. I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm going to do an RST. Yeah, so to me, that's one sound because it's RST. It's in every QSO. In the very beginning, I heard an R and an S and a T, and then I associated that with I have to send that in every QSO. I have to tell the guy what his signal report is, and that became one sound. In the same way that when I hear name, NAME, or when I hear QTH, that's all one sound. And every word that's in my working CW vocabulary in the beginning would be those things I mentioned with the weather, etc. That's one sound. And if you use it enough, meaning that you have to get on the air, then it does become recognizable. And you know exactly what it is. It's when they stray, and you're copying just fine because, the other person's using these words that but now they might throw in the word daughter, and then you're lost. A lot of people get lost on words that they don't know. But if you use those words and you start using them, then those words get added to your vocabulary too. So when my daughters moved to California, that the word daughter, I can pick that up at any speed because I've used it so much. And I think that is the theory here. The characters have to be sent fast, minimum of 20 words per minute speed, because otherwise it would drag too long. It's not going to sound, you're not going to hear a word when each character is slow and dragging. There has to be like a rhythm to it. The way they used to teach CW was when you learned 13 words a minute was probably 13 words a minute character speed or something like that, where, you probably would have picked it up a lot quicker if you learned 13 words, CW at 13 words a minute, but the character speed a lot faster. It helps because you can hear the rhythm and you can put the characters together to form words.
Well, is that easy enough to do with a straight key? Can you actually send characters at 20 words a minute with a straight key and not get a glass arm?
Well, there are people that can do that. I was certainly not one of them. I gave the straight key up. I mean, I still use it on straight key night, last day of the year. But yeah, it's just too much for my wrist. So I went to an iambic paddle, which couldn't be any easier. It's like a light switch, like binary. One side is a dit, and one side is a da. Your hand is not going up and down, like it is on a straight key. You're resting, basically your hand on a table, and it's just your fingers are moving, one side for the dit and one side for the da. There's no pressure on your hand at all. And it's very easy, to have a long QSOs. So yeah, I use the iambic paddle for that reason. It can be very painful using the straight key as you get older because, nothing works the way it used to.
That's exactly right. I'm learning this as we go along. We've had a number of CWops folks on the podcast, and most recently this week, as a matter of fact, Peter Butler, W1UU, was here. What role do you or did you play in CWops?
Let me just go back a little bit. So I took a few years off after I started in ham radio, and I had the kids and all that stuff. And then I got back into ham radio and CW, and I was trying to get my speed up. So I found CWops organization. Wasn't a member or anything, and I enrolled in one of their classes. They had a CW Academy. I enrolled in their level 2 class. They have, at the time, they had 3 levels. Level 1 for beginners and level 2 for, intermediate, and level 3 for advanced. And I took the class, and I was about 18 words a minute, maybe 20 on a good day. I wasn't a beginner, that was for sure. So it turned out that the instructor, for whatever reason, couldn't continue. This was after the second or third class. And they couldn't find another instructor. And we kind of all agreed, I volunteered to go ahead and, lead the class, since this is all stuff, that I was very comfortable with. And I did. And it went very well. And after the class finished, I applied for CWops membership, and I got that. And I volunteered to be an instructor in the CWops, CW Academy. I did that for, maybe a year, and we really didn't have anyone that was really managing the whole CW Academy. I mean, there were a couple of people helping out, and things were not tied together, meaning that, people who want to take a class and have signed up for a class, their names and information were on separate spreadsheets. So I came along with my computer background and kind of, turned that into a better system that can be managed more easily. And I did that. I led the CW Academy for about 4 or 5 years, taking the sign-ups and assigning the people to classes. And you had to consider their geographic location and find someone in the same time zone to be the advisor. And, I did training for the advisors, and I also ran the classes myself. I usually ran about 3 classes each semester myself, and I did that for a while, and I enjoyed it very much. So I'm taking a little hiatus right now. I'm starting to work on a few other things that I can mention a little bit later. But that's how I got into the CWops.
Let me take a quick break to tell you about my favorite amateur radio audio podcast, and that's the Ham Radio Workbench podcast with George, KJ6VU, Jeremy, KF7IJZ, and it now includes Michael Walker, VA3MW, where they pursue topics, technology, and projects on their ham radio workbenches every 2 weeks. The group documents their projects and makes circuit boards available to their listeners. They have interesting guests and go in deep. Jeremy may complain about the overall length of the podcast, but friends, let me tell you that I could listen to it all day, and that's good. Even if you are a seasoned ham radio builder or just getting started, be sure to join George, Jeremy, and Mike now for the Ham Radio Workbench podcast on every podcast player. Use the link on this week's show notes page by clicking on the image. And now back to our QSO today. Let's go down in the weeds a little bit. I've had a number of people from CWops on, but I never asked really about how the academy works. I want to come to the CWops Academy. I have a miserable code speed. I haven't been operating on CW for years and years. What's my first step?
Yeah, the CWops has a web page. You can easily find it if you search for it on the internet. And
it's in the show notes page here today too. So
okay, yeah. So you just go in there, and there's a sign up where you can sign up. And if you're like, it's not a bad idea. A lot of people just want to, jump into an advanced class, and they really don't have the background for it. It's not a bad idea just to take the level 1, just as a refresher. And what we're talking about, I think it's 16 weeks. And there's usually 2 classes during the week. So you sign up, in other words, you put down the information that they're asking for, and I think it does ask you which class would be appropriate for you, and it explains the differences between the level 1 and the level 2 and the level 3. But once you sign up, you get a confirmation back from the person that is handling this. That used to be me, but there are other people doing it now. And you're added to the database, and depending on how many people are signing up, you might need to, wait a couple of months, or, if you hit things right, you'll be, in the next semester.
You register, and what the Academy is waiting for is for enough students to make a class. Is that right? How many students make a class?
Yeah, they have plenty of students. They probably have too many students given the number of advisors, people running the classes. But usually a class will consist of 5 students.
Meeting on Zoom or something like that?
Yeah, meeting on Zoom, exactly.
Okay.
And so the advisor will bring the students, into the Zoom class, and you'll be presented with, pictures of each student and the instructor. Everybody sees everything, and if Zoom behaves itself, it doesn't distort the audio too much, then everybody can hear very clearly everyone else's CW. So it's a nice little setup. There's no cost.
Okay, Jerry, I'm really interested, and I think that the people that are listening who aren't doing this might also want to know the steps. What do I need? Do I need a code practice oscillator?
You need some type of oscillator, but it depends, where you are in ham radio. A lot of people are just brand new. They don't even have a radio. And so for them, they don't need to go buy a radio, but they can get, an oscillator and a speaker. Like right now when I'm doing the CW, I'm not on the air or anything. All I have is a keyer and my paddle. And the keyer has a speaker on it. That's really all you need.
We're starting from the perspective that we're going to send characters at 20 words a minute. That's where we're starting. Would you recommend starting with a keyer kit, a keyer chip, a keyer whatever, and iambic paddle or some kind of paddles? Would you suggest that from out of the box?
Yeah, CWops has a preference for you to use a paddle because as you get better, if you start, with a straight key, there's a whole big learning thing, and it's not that easy just to transition to the paddle. Plus, there's a cost involved with all this stuff. You want to keep it to a minimum. And quite frankly, as I explained earlier, the paddle is just a lot easier. Being a new thing for a lot of people, you just have to, build up and get used to the device, but it really is very easy to use. I thought the paddle was like a godsend. I thought there was only such a thing as a straight key when I got started. And then somebody said, hey, why don't you try this paddle? I thought this thing was a godsend. My God, this thing is unbelievable.
But you don't have to start with a Bengali sculpture. You could actually make something with a coffee can and a block of wood.
Yeah. So you're not really, in these classes, you're not really getting on the air. Although you are encouraged to get on the air, but not for the classes. The classes are on Zoom, and everyone on the Zoom call can hear you because you have a speaker of some kind, but you're not on the air. So it's a nice, safe environment, in other words.
And if you're using Zoom, you could use your smartphone too.
Yeah, you could use your smartphone. You can use a tablet, works fine, or a computer. Yeah, it's very flexible, and it's usually given in the early evening, usually around 7 in the evening, local time to wherever you are, to around 9 or even 10 if you're one of the people that can stay up late. You have time to, if you're a working person, most people are, you have time to come home, have dinner, go through the family stuff, and then take the class a little bit later on.
So if I'm taking level 1 at CW Academy, what are the things that you're working on? You're assuming a minimal knowledge or a base knowledge of the Morse code, right? The ability to at least pass the novice exam. Am I right?
No. We're starting from scratch, really. We're not assuming anything. And they teach the characters. There's a sequence of, that's followed. In other words, they'll introduce 3 or 4 characters each session, and there's a reason behind which characters are selected. They go together, or they're needed to support ones that are a little bit more complicated, like the L or the F. I mean, those wouldn't be taught first. The A would be taught first. It's only two characters. I mean, two sounds. And the E and the T, that's the E, and this is the T. That's only one sound. So those, are building blocks once you get that down. And then we can make, there aren't that many words that can be made with the E, A, and T, but you have the word T, T-E-A, eat, E-A-T, etc. So, as you get more characters added to the list, you can make more words. And so, the advisor will introduce the characters for that week, and he'll practice the characters with everyone in the class. And if you mistake the N character, which is this, it's a dash dot. For the A character, which is a dot dash, it's in reverse. He'll correct that, things like that. And pretty soon, we're only talking about 26 characters. It's not rocket science. It's 26 characters. I think really anyone can do that if you want to do it. I think it's like anything else. If you really like CW or you want to learn it, and you're going to give it a chance, you're going to do well. Let's put it that way. And it's like anything else. Like if I love tennis and I played and practiced tennis for hours a day, I'm going to get better. And it doesn't have to be tennis. It can be anything else, golf or anything, or learning a new language. And CW is like learning a new language. And if you're motivated to the point where you have a high interest, you're going to commit a certain amount of time, and there is a little bit of practice that has to be done between the sessions. And you're going to do that, you're going to do well. Because the bottom line is we're talking 26 characters and a couple of punctuation things, like a period and a comma, a question mark. So there aren't many characters. And after doing this for a while, I firmly believe, that anyone could get well past 20 words a minute. Personally, although I don't know that everyone agrees with me, but personally, I think that anyone with enough practice can get up to 40 words a minute, which is pretty fast. So it's just, you got to want to do it. And you got to, what CWops is providing is just a disciplined way of presenting CW in chunks that make sense and shows you how to build on, each week builds on the prior. And so there's 16 sessions and it's 8 weeks. After 8 weeks, you could definitely pass, the novice test if there was one. There isn't one anymore.
But at level 1, could you get to over 10 words a minute? I mean, do you encourage your students at level 1 to get on the air with it?
Oh, yeah. The nice thing about the class having 5 students is that you sort of, buddy up in the class. And, it's encouraged, and a lot of students will do this on their own, is just meet on the air if they have a radio and an antenna that's set up. And they'll practice and go over this stuff themselves and get better at it. And they'll be on the air. So what we do is we kind of slow things down between the characters. So we're sending at 20 words a minute the character, but the actual word is slowed down to perhaps, somewhere around 15 or so. You don't want to slow it down too much. But so the word eat, you're not sending it like this. This is too fast. It's, it's all together. So we'll slow it down. Oh, sorry. A little space, a little, they call it Farnsworth, a little space between each character. And you actually want it to go fast. It sort of doesn't sound right. Wait a minute, it's way too fast. So you actually want it to get fast. And your brain will quickly adjust to it. And fast really is relative. To someone who's an experienced operator, 20 words a minute is slow, but to somebody just starting out, 20 words a minute, my God, nothing is just way too fast. So it's all relative. And as you get better, you have a new definition of what's slow and what's fast. And that's the beauty of this thing, is that you just get better the more you do, the more you work it. It's like anything else. The more you do, the better you get. The more you practice, the better you get.
Are you encouraging your students to write words down? Should I have the yellow pad and the pen at first?
No.
Are you trying to do it all in your head from the very beginning?
Yeah, in the very beginning, the words that we're forming are just 2 or 3 characters. Really no need to write anything. We want the student to hear the sounds. We don't want the student to write anything down. Now, in a regular QSO, I do write stuff down, but that's like if the guy gives me his name, and his name is John, and he's 55 years old. Well, I'm going to write that down so that I don't forget it, or he tells me where he lives, I'll write that down. But I'm not writing down, every word in a sentence. So, in fact, I try not to write anything down, but I will write down his call sign, his name, and, things like that. And it also gives you something to talk about when they turn it back over to you, and now it's your turn to send CW. And then if he tells me, something, unique, that he just got a new car or he just got a new ham radio, I'll write that down. So as a tickler, when it's my turn, to send the CW.
What's your current rig?
Right now I have a Kenwood TS590, and I also have a Elecraft K3. And I will say those Elecrafts are great radios. They're a little bit expensive, but they're really good radios. But the Kenwood is very affordable. It does everything I need, and I could probably, never get another radio in my life and be very happy with that. And in the used market, a lot of these radios are very affordable. There's really no need to spend thousands and thousands of dollars on the equipment. The name brands, the ICOM, Kenwood, Yaesu, they all have very affordable radios. And that's what I would recommend for somebody starting out.
One of the big 3 or 4, if you include Elecraft, or 5, Flex Radio.
Yeah, I mean, those are great radios, but a little bit pricey. The Sun Cycle is starting, the new one is, and you really, once the propagation improves, you don't need a whole lot of power. So having something like a QRP radio may be all that you need, for a number of years.
Well, as a CW operator, I've had Elmers on the show before who've said, well, a QRP radio as a first rig is really, not only do you have to learn the skills to be able to operate on the air, but having no power to begin with is a little challenging. How do you feel about that?
No, I don't think it's really that challenging. Like, I like to operate at night, and I understand people operate all through the day, if you're retired, or now that we're all working from home, you might want to get on the day during the day. But if you get on at night on 40 meters, all you need is about 5 watts. And I'm not exaggerating there. There's really no difference. I'm not chasing DX stations, but just having a QSO with somebody. 5 to 10 watts is basically all you need on that lower band on 40 meters. And a wire antenna is really all you need. So many times I cut my power all the way down so that I don't interfere with other stations. But if I get on 20 meters or during the day on other frequencies, then I will use a little bit of power, a couple of 100 watts. But at night, 5-10 watts is all you need.
Now, it's my understanding when we were talking earlier in the week to set up this call that you actually have 2 QTHs that you operate between?
Yeah, I have 2. I grew up in New York, and I have a QTH up there. And I'm right now in the Washington, D.C. area in Northern Virginia, in a town called Herndon. I have the homeowners restrictions, as many people have here in the Washington, D.C. area. But in New York, I don't, and I have a much nicer setup. I usually go up there to do the contests. I have a beam antenna. I have wire antennas. I can, put out a lot of power.
What's the HOA antenna?
A vertical. I have a vertical. I'm not supposed to have any antennas, but I have about 3/4 of an acre here, and the antenna, I'm looking at it right now, is sitting all the way in the back, and you really can't see it from the front.
So it's sitting on the ground?
Yeah, it's on the ground, and if you could see it, you wouldn't know what it was anyway. I think I told somebody here, jokingly, one of the neighbors, it was like, we hang our clothes on it, because it had these steel radials. And they kind of just shrugged, okay, whatever. I mean, they don't know what it was. But in New York, there are no such restrictions. So I like going up there. It's very peaceful.
So it's in the country, your New York place?
It's in, upstate New York. And it's in a town called Rhinebeck. And it's about 60 or 70 miles south of Albany, which is the state capital. Under
the current operating conditions because of COVID-19, are you able to drive back and forth relatively easy?
Yeah, it's not a problem. I don't stop. I drive through. I'm pretty much quarantined anyway. I'm not out there, running around. I'm going to stay in my house. I have all the supplies I need. So, yeah, it's not a problem. And I usually go up a couple of times a month, and I'll stay, though. I'll stay maybe 2 weeks or 2 to 3 weeks in each location.
What do you think the greatest challenge is facing amateur radio now?
To me, just having ham radio stay relevant so that we are always attracting new hams to the hobby and grow the hobby. This, to me, is what I see as the most challenging thing. We have to provide, opportunities and, to new operators, and so that it's fun, allow them to succeed, to grow, have fun in the hobby. And a lot of people, that takes a lot of effort. We need volunteers like the CW Academy. CWops is a great organization. I think there's another one is the Long Island CW Club. I don't know if you've heard of that. They also teach CW. That's a nice organization. There's the FISTS organization. There's a few like that. We need a lot more than that. And we really need, in my opinion, to take it to the next level.
What do you think that next level is?
The next level, the way I see it, and, it's not an easy thing, is some type of a mentorship. Like in the old days, like when I was talking earlier about the radio club, the local one, and I was asking for someone to help me. Eventually, I did get that help. But, if you look at with the inclusion of the internet that we have now and all the social media, that could easily be done. So if you're mentoring somebody, that may just mean, sending emails back and forth, having questions answered, or maybe just getting on Zoom once a week and having a face-to-face, and eventually getting on the air maybe once a week. And, I think everyone that is, good in that aspect of ham radio, whether it's CW or sideband, doesn't really matter, can find some time to do that. I think that's needed because it's not enough to show somebody, how to use these things. Like I could show you how to use CW, but it takes, we don't have 40, 50 years to get better at something. But somebody could, shorten that time by showing you the ins and the outs. Here's what you need. This will get you 60% of the way there. And here's what you need to work on, to build up the other areas. You need that type of training. And it doesn't need and it doesn't require somebody paying for a service. This should all be done for free as part of growing the hobby. I don't see that, out there right now. I mean, sure, two people may stumble across each other on the air, and they have a lot in common, and they decide, hey, let's get on once a week, or, and that's great, and that certainly helps you out. But I'm talking about where you have someone who is like, an expert at what they're doing. They've been doing, sideband or CW for a number of years, and they're good at it. And they have a lot of information that they can pass over. And the more they give you, the more you'll enjoy that aspect of the hobby, whatever it may be.
What advice would you give to newer returning hams to the hobby?
I'm focused on CW. I certainly would encourage people to give that a try, because not only is it a great mode, I've gotten so much from it. I don't know that I could have gotten that. I could have gotten a lot of aggravation, which I have from a lot of the other modes, like sideband. I mean, I personally don't enjoy, in the middle of a contest, screaming my lungs off. I know a lot of people use recordings and things like that, but that's not fun for me. But CW, it's elegant. To me, it's therapeutic. So I would say give it a try. You don't need a huge investment. QRP radio and a wire antenna is basically it. And minimal equipment, and give it a try, because it's a fantastic skill. And I think, I'm always trying to improve myself, to learn new things, to piggyback on something else I learned that, might take me down the road to something completely different but related, and open up a whole new world to me. I'm always looking for that. I'm not going to just, go to work, although I am retired now, go to work, come home, and do the same old routine stuff. I'm a very inquisitive person by nature. So CW, to me, has filled a huge void, and has, given me motivation, has, been a stepping stone to a lot of other things.
Jerry, I want to thank you so much for joining me on the QSO Today podcast. I really appreciate it. You actually have me inspired to go and make CW Academy one of my projects right after the expo. I want to thank you so much and wish you 73.
Okay, thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. 73.
That concludes this episode of QSO Today. I hope that you enjoyed this QSO with Jerry. Please be sure to check out the show notes that include links and information about the topics that we discussed. Go to www.qsotoday.com and put in AC4BT in the search box at the top of the page. Be sure to click on the Expo menu item at the top of the page for updates on the upcoming QSO Today Virtual Ham Expo. I am updating the website as we have more information. My thanks to ICOM America for its support of the QSO Today podcast. Please show your support of ICOM America by clicking on their banner in the show notes pages. You may notice that some of the episodes are transcribed into written text. If you'd like to sponsor this or any other episode into written text, please contact me. Support the QSO Today podcast by first joining the QSO Today email list by pressing the subscribe buttons on the show notes pages. I will not spam you or share your email address with anyone. Become a listener sponsor monthly or annually by clicking on the sponsor buttons on the show notes pages, or use my Amazon link before shopping at Amazon. Amazon gives me a small commission on your purchases while at the same time protecting your privacy. I'm grateful for any way that you show appreciation and support. It makes a big difference as I head towards episode 400. QSO Today is now available in the iHeart Radio, Spotify, YouTube, and a bunch of other online audio services, including the iTunes Store. Look on the right side of the show notes pages for a listing of these services. You can use the Amazon Echo and say, "Alicia, play the QSO Today podcast from TuneIn." My thanks to Ben Bresky, who edits every single show and allows both this host and my guest to sound brilliant. Thanks, Ben. Until next time, this is Eric, 4Z1UG, 73. The QSO Today podcast is a product of KEG Media Inc., who is solely responsible for its content.